Hey guys, in today's video we're going to be tying up Brian Chan's famous ruby-eyed leech. No fly fisherman's box would be complete without this amazing pattern. It is a definite producer. I'll be tying this on Togens 60-degree barbless jig hook in a size 12. These things are needle point sharpness. They will pierce some lips and super strong as well. I'll be using some Wapsi extra small cone heads. They're a 4mm size. For the actual ruby eye itself, I'm using some killer Caddis glass beads. These are approximately a 1/8 in width. For the main body, I'll be using Arizona Simi seal in black red. It's fantastic dubbing. To tie in the actual pin, I'm using Semperfli's Nanosilk in black. And then for the remainder of this fly, I'll be using UTC 70 in black color as well. For the actual pin head of this balanced leech, I'm using a modified push pin. Just go ahead and trim that up if you have a pair of side cutters, and then remove the actual pin, and it works for a perfect size of this size 12 barbless jig hook. You'll want to start out with your Semperfli Nanosilk just to create a base on this hook and give the balanced pin something to grip onto. As usual, you'll never want to use your good scissors to cut this Nanosilk, as it will dull them. So I typically just use an X-Acto knife blade to trim this. And then attach your cone head onto the pin and your ruby eye just in behind that. You'll notice my ruby eye is somewhat buried into this cone. That's exactly what you want. You don't want too prominent of a ruby eye, but you just want it to fit inside of there and showing about 2/3 or half of that. And then you can do some tests in water if you thread through the actual eye of this jig hook, and make sure that the balance and the proportion is good so that it's hanging horizontally in the water column. When you tie in the actual semi-seal fibers, it will weigh down and balance out this hook, so you typically want to run it a little bit front heavy. When you use this semi-seal for the tail section, always just pull apart the extra long fibers and restack those so that it's as uniform of a tail as possible. Do a couple of wraps to tie that in near the base of this hook. 1 or 2 wraps underneath to lift up the tail fibers from wrapping around the bend of the hook, and then fold that back and get a couple of wraps to secure that in. I find it helps to pin that thread against the folded over semi-seal, and then you're able to get a nice precise tie and not build up any bulk in that tail as well. And then here I'm just forming a dubbing loop and then tying the thread back onto it. And I learned a little trick to wrap that thread around the actual dubbing loop, and then it just helps create a nice pinch point to start off your dubbing when you are inserting that into the fly. Give that thread a whip finish and into the bobbin cradle so you have your hands free to work on this dubbing loop itself. And then go ahead and prepare your semi-seal dubbing fibers. You want them nice, thin, evenly spaced. I usually do this just on the desk itself and pull out any of the long ones, and then you can feed that into the dubbing loop. I'm actually using a cake little pinpoint. It works as a dubbing twister. I currently don't have one, but you get the idea as well. Twist this up nice and tight, and then we'll use a Dr. Slick's dubbing brush. You can use a toothbrush with Velcro, it works just the same, but this is a nice little tool to have. Pull out any of those folded over fibers, and then very carefully start wrapping this dubbing loop around the hook, getting nice concise wraps. As you're wrapping this dubbing loop, you're going to want to make sure to watch out for the point of this hook, as that can sever your thread. And then just carefully and concisely wrap this dubbing loop up the body, making sure to utilize your offhand to get the dubbing fibers swept back and nice and clean up to the actual ruby eye of this. And then as you approach the actual eye of this hook, be careful and make sure that you get a couple of wraps in front of that and tucked in behind that ruby eye. And then you can add a little bit of dubbing as well, just to make sure that it looks nice and uniform and there's no gaps. And then we'll brush this all out and make it look very sleek and tapered. I also recommend at the end of this tie, get a glass of near boiling water, submerge this fly into there, and then you can shape it into a nice teardrop form. I'll show you one of my others that I've done this with. That's typically what the naturals look. There's a distinct teardrop tapered look on these leeches, and this semi-seal stuff just dances in the water. It looks very, very lifelike. Give it as much of a brush out as you want. Sometimes it can be left a little bit scruffier. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so it's got to look good, and I try to clean up any of those loose fibers as I can. This balanced leech pattern is tied to be fished under an indicator suspended in the water column. You can fish it anywhere from 20 feet down to the shallows, nice and static, especially if there's a little bit of a water chop, and just do a slow hand retrieve. It will produce results. You can also tie this on a regular hook and strip it on a sinking line. And there you guys have it. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Brian Chan's Ruby Eyed Leech. Happy tying, and we'll see you on the water.